So, hello and welcome to episode number 2 of In Conversation. Episode 1 saw us with the eventing world, but this time we moved to the world of dressage. And this time it's international dressage rider Matt Frost.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for joining me. Great to have you on board. And I'd like to go right to the start, where it all began for you. Talk a little bit about your early life with horses. And it all began at age 6.
Yes, age 6. That's quite a long time ago because I'm 40 on Tuesday. So we're going right back. Yeah. I got, how did I get into horses? I got into horses. Originally, I loved animals, and my sister did the whole ballet thing and then gave that up and tap dancing. And then she decided that all the other girls are going horse riding. And I wanted to be a farmer at the time because I like tractors and things. So I thought I'd go along with her just to really see cows and tractors, and kind of thought, oh, this looks quite interesting. We were lucky enough to have a local riding school in the village in Pensford, where we grew up, a guy's farm. And second time Lou went, I jumped on as well, and that was it. I had the bug and loved it, and couldn't stop wanting to go riding. My whole childhood was really about going to school in the week and then spending as much time as I could down at the riding stables, which I think kept me out of trouble, gave me a focus, and it's something that just gets under your skin, and that you can't get enough of.
It was age 10 then when you got your first pony. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah. After years of begging my parents, desperately wanting my own pony, I would kind of work at the riding school, muck out and for a free kind of riding lesson, and that was my weekends. At 10, I was lucky enough, or we were lucky enough, my sister also, to bought a pony called Megan, who she was a bit she taught me a lot, put it that way. She wasn't gonna suffer fools easily, and I was definitely the person that was at the show getting eliminated at the second fence. She had great ability, but she was, if you ask me right, I'll do it, and if you don't, no way. So it taught me to be patient.
Yeah.
If I look back all the way through my childhood as well, we lived in Pensford until I was 16, and then Megan was sold, which was not great for me, because of course that was an end of an era. But then obviously as one door shuts, another door opens, and we moved to Newbury, and I for the summer loaned a horse from my parents' friends, and we based it at a local stables. And then I came into contact with a lady called Rebecca Dawes at the time. She's now Maxwell McDonald, who had event horses, and my dad kind of got talking to her. Really, I saw her sort of take a horse cross country, and it was a horse called Winnie, who I then later on competed. I thought, wow, this looks amazing, what a lovely horse. And Rebecca then gave me the opportunity to go down and ride for her. She had a small yard down near Marlborough, and I would event.
And you mentioned eventing there, and one thing that some people might not know about you is before you hit the world of dressage, it was eventing, first of all. Fond memories of eventing?
Yeah, very much so. I think also eventing 3 phases. I would kind of improve one phase and then lose the other. And again, I had another mare, Winnie, that I competed, and I can remember my first BHS event with her. It was Savanac horse trials, and I didn't do too badly in the dressage, and then went clear show jumping, and I kind of got all the way around to the water complex, and had a refusal, which I was absolutely gutted about. And but again, you have to learn straight away. There's going to be times that you're going to be disappointed, and learn from it, and build up a technique and an understanding with the horse. Maybe I should have taken the longer route then. So yeah, I did enjoy it. Show jumping wasn't my forte in the respect of seeing a stride. I'm a Taurian. I'm not the most patient. From nature, I've learned how to become a bit more patient. I couldn't wait for a stride, so I ended up standing horses off brilliantly. But I loved the cross country. I thought it was a great kick, and I could kind of see a stride from a gallop and when my blood was up. But jumping very high upright fences probably wasn't my forte.
I mean, it really is quite exhilarating going eventing, but do you think that having evented, it's changed the way that you train dressage horses? Has it had an impact at all?
I like to take the horses out, in that we're lucky enough next door we've got a gallop, so I like to take them out. I like to do different things with them. I think variety for a rider as well is very important. I'm lucky enough now to be coaching top level eventers, and also to sort of get to ride those horses, and just to see sometimes the first time I actually achieved a line of one-time changes on what turned out to be my first Grand Prix horse, Lorenzo, was out in the field, because in the school I couldn't get it. So I went out, and in the space of 5 minutes, then got a line of changes with him. So yeah, I think it's very important that you ride horses in lots of different environments and lots of different weather conditions. We saw at London 2012, bright sunshine versus heavy rain, and the horses have got to be used to it. I'm lucky I've got an indoor school, so I can train a horse consistently every day, train riders every day consistently, but we're competing outside, and the horses need to learn to go in every weather condition. So I think also from the eventing, that's done outside on grass on the side of a hill. The horses have to be used to it, and so do the riders, and the combination.
And it'd be nice to talk a little bit about a yard that you went to and rode at for a while that actually still now has some eventing connections. If we look at Isold Stud, now the home of Tim and Janelle Price of the eventing world. Tell me a little bit about your time there, because that's where you met two owners that have been really quite prolific in your career.
Yeah, so it was at the end of the road where Rebecca had her yard, and we went up to use the school sometimes. Rebecca didn't have a school at her yard, so we would hack up there, and kind of chatting to Jan, who they were breeding Trakehner horses at the time. And he had a horse there called Queenie, who was eventing. The owner was away on a gap year, and he had some younger horses that he wanted a rider to kind of help him break in. So we kind of struck up a relationship. Birgitte, his wife, was over in Denmark at the time, because they're Danish. So I got involved helping Jan, and struck up a really good bond with Jan. And Jan was always, like Rebecca, somebody that believed in me straight away, and could see I kind of had relatively good empathy with the horse. He took me under his wing. He evented for Denmark as well, and we kind of jumped the horses and did flat work. The horses that he was breeding obviously were a combination of dressage and event horses, so sometimes had a bit more movement than I was used to. So I kind of got the idea of having a bigger moving horse, and a horse that maybe was designed. Rebecca had sometimes horses that were raced, that were retrained and things like that. These horses were kind of bred with a bit more movement in them, so I kind of enjoyed that. And I evented one of his horses called Elise, again to sort of novice level, and yeah, I would do quite well in the dressage. And then yeah, she was really good for me, actually. She looked after me even when I got it wrong into the show jumps. she just let them for me. And then yeah, struck up a relationship with Jan Birgitte. I was doing my A levels at the time, and then would kind of ride at the weekends, and kind of moved in with them, and they kind of became my horsey family, really. That's kind of how I got the introduction to moving over to Denmark, where I spent 4 years.
And thank you very much for doing the job for me there, moving us on to the next part, because that's exactly what I was going to say. Denmark. Now, not a lot of riders can say that they've ridden, all over the world, not just for competition, but for training. 4 years in Denmark with Jan and Birgitte. That's pretty impressive stuff. Tell me a little bit about your time over there.
So my parents obviously were concerned with me going into horses, not knowing, it's a hard, cutthroat industry, and they were worried about my future. They wanted stability and security. So I actually, whilst I was doing that, I did my equine dentistry training, and that was over in America at the time. There was no qualification system over here, so I did that and kind of did an apprenticeship with a guy over in America. So I kind of had done that, and I always wanted to ride. So Jan and Birgitte were great at giving me advice. I said to them, what do I need to do? Obviously, the horse industry is a very expensive sport. It's a very expensive industry. And how will I make it? And Jan basically said to me, you've got to be good enough that people will want to give you horses to ride. So of course, in Denmark, there's a Bereiter system that takes 6 years to become a trained instructor. Bereiter is called. And there are state-owned riding schools over there, which each has their top level instructor. And then they have apprentices that work alongside within the riding school. So from their experience, they were very involved in one riding school over in Denmark. He advised me to move over to Denmark and to basically train alongside the apprentices. Birgitte had taken a few horses over to Denmark for a month, and I went with her, and that was also a riding school. And in that time, I got to ride horses that could do flying changes. It was amazing, and that's I think really where I kind of made the move to become a dressage rider. To feel a horse work like that for the first time, absolutely unbelievable. And the guy that was teaching me didn't necessarily speak great English, and he just recounts like the smile that was on my face when I did my first flying change on the aid on a horse called Rainbow. I'll never forget it. So that's kind of what gave me the bug, and I just wanted to go and do it. And I would do anything to be able to either ride a horse like that or train a horse like that, and that's how it started. So I worked at the start with some of Jan and Birgitte's friends who they had a stud, they were breeding horses. So I spent half my time breaking horses in and riding the young horses for them. And then I'd go over to a guy who used to train Anne van Olst that Lottie Fry now is based with, and help him out, watch the training, ride the young horses. And that was my first job, and that was out in the middle of nowhere. So it was a bit bleak, I would say. And then I worked for a guy called Jan Olsen, who was a horse dealer, and again, a Bereiter and a trainer. And that was an amazing experience because I got to ride lots of horses. I worked really, really hard, mucking horses out, platting horses, and showing them off to potential clients. And again, watching. He had a top rider there called Astrid, who would also help me with my riding. I got to compete a few horses with him. So that was an amazing year there. And then I went on and ran a yard with Astrid up in north of Copenhagen. And that was like a livery yard. And I got introduced to a lot of people. Also did a bit of teaching there and riding young horses. And then my final job was not too far away, working for a family who had a riding stables there. The daughters competed. The younger daughter was a junior rider at the time, and lovely horses. Again, they bred some horses themselves, so I'd help them with that. And it was a very social time as well because they weren't too far from Copenhagen, so it was a great time. Yeah, and then it kind of got to the point of where I was looking to come back. Jan always says sort of go for 4 years, get experience, and I got loads of experience, and it kind of was a natural time to come back. And I was thinking to myself, you know, I would like to base myself at a stud that would possibly have some really nice young horses coming through that I would be able to compete. And that's kind of what I did, and answered a Horse Quest advert for a riding groom's job at the Nebeley stud in Gloucester.
You mentioned your time there at the Nebeley stud with Carl Hester, and due to the level he was competing at the time, didn't quite get the opportunity to compete some of the younger horses, maybe 2 horses by the name of whether it's Utopia or Vallegro.
Yeah, it's so I was going for lessons on the stud horses, and yeah, Carla was brilliant. He straight away believed in me. He could see how I was working with the young horses. He at the time within the BD system, because he competed at such a high level, he wasn't allowed to compete at novice and elementary level. He could do the young horse classes with the horses. He was also busy trying to qualify for the Olympics. He had Escapado at the time, and also Spencer, who was with him at the time, had Delendo that he was competing at high level. So Spencer then couldn't compete at the lower levels either because he was Group 1 rider. So I got offered an opportunity to compete some of the young horses that he had, and it just so happens that along came Utopia at 5 years old, who I was lucky enough to compete at novice level, and then Vallegro, who came over as a 3-year-old. I rode him at home, did a couple of demonstrations with him. In the Shearwater finals, Carl had qualified both for the Supreme Championships, so I got to ride Vallegro in the final, and yeah, it was an amazing time to be asked by somebody that I looked up to for so many years, who was kind of one of my role models and idols, and to have somebody believe in me like that and give me the opportunity, I accepted with open arms. And also from being around Carl, I got introduced to other people, one of which being Helen Delisney, who owned a horse called Flyaway Wish, who she was very straight away believing in me and gave me the opportunity or gave me a half share in the horse, and who went on to be my first international small tour horse.
One thing that I'm always quite curious about, the fact that you've ridden horses that have then gone on to do, ride at the top level. Did you ever think that they'd go on to win all those medals, to win all those titles? Did you ever have that inkling that they might have it?
I thought to myself, well, if Carl believes in them and he's got all this experience and they are something that he's looking, because that was before Charlotte came along, of course he wouldn't waste his time if they gave me the most amazing thing. And I think Utopia, he's been here before. He was so easy to train and he was so easy at shows. Vallegro was the same. It taught me that their character, you have to have there's one thing having the best moving horse in the world, but if they haven't got the opportunity or the want to do it, the want to listen to the rider, it's going to be a tough call. And both those horses were straight away something that you would love to ride every day, and Vallegro's movement was humongous, and he struggled sometimes with his balance being so big moving, but he would always try, and you can see that all the way through their career, that being in the crowd watching those two horses in London was one of the highlights in my life. Of course, we would all love to be there and on the horse themselves, but they did an amazing job.
So then, Matt, in 2006, that's when you went on to set up AM Dressage, which is where you're still based now.
Yeah, that's right. Adam and I got together as partners, 2005. And Adam had been helping me a bit with Wish because I didn't really have any transport to get horses around. So he was very kind in coming to help me a little bit with him. So we kind of started working together with the horses, and he was doing clinics all over the country, and always wanted to have a place where people could come and train, and he wanted to do the residential courses. So I was renting some stables at Billow Farm at the time, 14 stables there, and we were always looking to kind of have our own place. So we were kind of putting the feelers out, and we found a racing stable, which is actually our neighbours, for sale, and looked at it, and it wasn't quite what we were looking for. But on the same agents, there was Winkle's Farm for sale, which was far bigger than we were ever anticipating buying. We didn't think that we could do it. It was a big kind of risk of, we haven't even got a business up and running in that respect to do that. But we were actually lucky enough to give them the opportunity to rent the place for a couple of years. So we kind of then ended up with 32 stables, a 5-bedroom farmhouse, 2 indoor schools, and 30 acres of land, which is far more than we ever thought or ever wanted. But anyway, we took the opportunity, and we moved the horses, and we set up the first clinic. Adam has a good friend called Jane who comes from Scotland, he kind of put it to tender with her and asked her if she would be interested in bringing some of her clients down for a 5-day kind of intensive training course, and if they didn't like it, they didn't need to pay type thing, just as a sort of a guinea pig trial. And we did that, and it was very successful. They were a great group of people, and there was a lot of drinking in the evenings and games, and it was a real kind of a grown-up pony club camp, I suppose. In the day that people were very serious about their riding, because you don't travel all the way from Aberdeen just to have a fun night out with Adam and Matt. So it was very serious in the daytime and also very serious in the evenings, and that kind of then just went on to become something that we did. We did the 5-day courses, and we had a Scottish week that there was every couple of months the Scottish clan would come down, and various people would join in, and it was a pretty intense time. Of course, when you take on such a big place, of course the bills and the running costs of a place are huge, and it became a bit sort of to run AM Dressage in the size that it needed so much putting in. It kind of got to the stage of the place was running us a bit, and I was looking to obviously continue competing and train and be more flexible, that I could do that, and I couldn't seem to find the balance right. So we decided 3 years ago to downsize the place, and we sold off basically half of the property. We just built some new stables and just costs down, because I'm lucky enough now that I've got I've been lucky all the way through my career to have some really nice horses to ride, but I'm at the stage in my career where I want to focus on my horses, and to have time to be able to do that. And also Adam has worked all his life really hard, and he wants to do different things. He's got a little car in the garage that he enjoys driving when he can, when he's allowed to. So just things kind of change a little bit, and you look for ways to give yourself more time. Life's really short, and as we're seeing also now, life's very precious, and we're lucky now to kind of enter into this kind of new chapter where we're still very busy at the centre, well, before Corona, but very serious about our competing and training, and still offering training for everybody at every level, but not quite so intensely, because it just got a bit too much for us to sustain. It's an exciting time. I've got a really good group of horses again, and some really lovely owners that are supporting me, and I'm really excited about the future. This year was going to be something that I got a horse going on to do international small tour, and then another one coming up through to start to compete small tour as well, and things are put on hold because of the obvious, but again, it's also been really good for me to spend time with the horses, mucking them out, turning them out in the field, getting to know them a bit better, because I fund a lot of my competing myself through my teaching and my training. So obviously when I'm not competing and riding, I'm busy training people that I love doing, but also to bring money in to actually fund my hobby, which is competing, because unfortunately we don't earn huge sums of money competing in dressage, and doesn't stop me wanting to do it, but the money's got to come from somewhere.
One thing I know you're quite keen on is these demos and masterclasses, whether that's to a crowd or whether that's something that's filmed. The presence of a crowd or a film crew or something like that, is that something that really benefits the younger horses for the future?
Funnily enough, actually going away from home, I think it's very good for I think it's very good anyway, but you can see all the horses kind of rise up and sort of be a bit more trusting of the rider. When you're at home, and I've got an outdoor arena, it's a beautiful outdoor arena, when there's a film crew at the other end, it's actually the Grand Prix horse that's the spookiest, because they're like, that's not usually there. Joey, who has done so many international shows, I did a big lecture demo for Horse and Country TV a while back, and he was so spooky and so silly about it because he's not normally there. Whereas G-Star, who was 4 at the time, was like, yeah, what's that?
Yeah.
Come on, that's fine. So yeah, I think it's also mixing stuff up at home. That's just that again taught me that I need to move the chairs around in the arena. They've got to get used to change, and they've got to trust me enough that that's not a problem. But yeah, they always surprise us, definitely.
And you mentioned a horse there called Joey. That's what he's known as at home, but Trebbiano is what you'd probably see on the record. Now, that's a ride of Caroline Chew. Tell me a little bit about the relationship there.
So Caroline is now a lawyer. She works at Freshfields in London. But at the time, she had I taught her for 6 years now, something like that. She was going to university in Bristol, and we live about an hour away from Bristol. And she had some horses in Germany. She's a passionate rider, and the whole family are very horsey. I actually met them in Denmark when I was working at the dealing yard at Jørn's place, and they all came over to buy horses. So it was an interesting coincidence that Caroline then came to train with us because she went to university in Bristol. So yeah, she had 4 sort of older horses that were schoolmasters, and her riding improved very quickly. She was able to come and ride frequently, and she knew the horses very well. So she would compete at sort of small tool level with them. They were looking for a horse the next sort of horse, a younger horse, to go on and compete at the Asian Games and the Southeast Asian Games, which is done at small tool level. So we were enlisted in trying to find such a horse. And again, I went to Denmark because I've got connections over there, and went to try and find some horses. I knew Caroline quite well by then. I knew the type of horses that I thought she could ride. She was very busy at the time, so finding horses is very hard work. To find a specific horse like Joey, it was tricky. So I went over and tried a few horses with a good friend called Klaus, who I knew back from the time I was in Denmark. And we went to Blue Horse in Denmark, where Joey was based. And actually, the rider that trained him knew from when I lived in Denmark. So that I could ring her, and she gave me the history of the horse, and it was just a bit more reassuring. And I rode him, and I loved him myself. And then Caroline and Adam went over to try him later on, and he came over, and yeah, he's gone from strength to strength. It was tricky at the start because there wasn't a lot of time. The Caroline had to get qualified for the SEA Games that were in Singapore at the time. So Joey arrived and she went out competing, and he'd kind of done into 2 over in Denmark. So she basically did an into 2 in advanced medium level. Every time she wanted to do a walk pirouette, he did piaffe, and it was just a total disaster. And I was like, what have I done? Big pressure on me and Adam, because we've recommended this horse that we believe in. And yeah, he was a horse that he loves going in the field. So we straight away turned him out, and just kind of got him. It was a big upset, obviously, for him, because he'd moved countries, moved yards, and he's a sensitive horse. But then she did really well in Singapore, where she got silver medal at the games, and then came back. And we wanted a horse that would go on, because she'd had a schoolmaster that she was competing at Grand Prix. But again, something that would go on and had longevity to it. So he obviously came back from Singapore and had a big break, because obviously he's flying over there, really hot country. And then coming back, we gave him, he had a holiday. And then I just played about with the Grand Prix work, and yeah, he's absolutely phenomenal. And then since then, he's gone on. We took him to Kuala Lumpur for the Asian Games as well, and he got a bronze medal there. And yeah, then she started her Grand Prix career, and I did some early Grand Prix with him. I was lucky enough to get him in the ring, and I've ridden him myself, and gone on to do a few internationals with him, because Caroline, I don't know how she does it. She works all week really hard in London, and then she'll come out and ride a couple of times at the weekends if we're lucky, or I meet her at the show, and she gets on and does what she can, because wow. Again, if you're if you're a full-time lawyer, and you take it seriously, you haven't got to say, oh, just by the way, I'm just going to go off and ride for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
So she is very dedicated. It's not a normal thing. I don't think you see it very often. A rider that gets so close to, she's so close to being for the Olympics, which is now next year. And she went to the World Equestrian Games, which was an amazing opportunity for us all. Fantastic for Singapore and fantastic for Joey and Caroline, who totally deserved it, and she did us all proud over there in Tryon.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see, from humble beginnings in Denmark to go on then and to do amazing, great things. And you mentioned the World Equestrian Games there not too long ago in Tryon, and also the Asian Games too. Now, they're venues that you've got to fly to. Talk to me a little bit about the process of traveling horses via aircraft.
Yeah, so we're very lucky. We have access to Andre Boutet, who is the British team vet. So we're very lucky that he will be around all the time. So if we get into trouble, of course, he'll come and help us out. But we usually use a bloodstock company called Pedons, and they will then book all the flights. They'll also arrange, because obviously when you go to various parts of the vaccinations, different protocol where we have to have various vaccinations and worming and pest control, basically some quarantine laws. We have to adhere to that. So it's months and months and months ahead that the process starts. So then once you've got the green light, you obviously then have to get transport papers from the ministry. So once all that's done, the horses get transported to a major airport. So for Singapore, they flew out of Heathrow Airport. For Tryon, they flew from Liège in Belgium. So they're transported by road to there. At the airport, there's a horse hotel in one of the hangars where the horses are rested. They're obviously looked at by a vet, check that they're still healthy to fly. They'll be hydrated, given food, allowed to rest. And then the horses are flown in a crate. So you'll see you won't necessarily know that they're horses, but again, they're loaded onto the cargo part of the plane. So when you see all these big lifts going in, so they're flown with horses. They have to have traveling grooms with them, people that have been qualified. Luckily, Rachel, who is our top international show groom, as she now is, having worked for us for around 10 years. She's been traveling with the horses and flying with the horses. So she's done a few flights now, and there are several grooms on site, more experienced, less experienced, to keep the horses in the best possible conditions. But horses are great. The horses that get to that kind of level, they've traveled a lot in lorries, they've stayed away a lot. As long as they've got their hay net and they feel comfortable, and also with people that are calm around them, horses feed off of people. So obviously if you've got a very nervous person traveling with a horse, you're going to make the horse nervous. So yeah, the horses are then put on the crate, and then they get transported out on a trolley and then lifted into the plane. And then they go through their pre-flight checks, and the horses are actually untied whilst they take off.
Right.
Because some horses like to sit down, so obviously they can't sit down. You can't actually get into the crates once they're in the crates. So obviously you've got to be careful what you put on the horse. Rug-wise, there's obviously climate control in the flight itself, but we don't tend to put a lot of protection on the legs, because obviously if it comes loose, we can't correct it when Rachel can't. I'm not there, but Rachel can't correct it when it's in there. But yeah, they tend to travel very, very well. Touch wood. Joey's an absolute pro, and yeah, he's done it well. And usually, if you're going to a games, like we flew with the British horses. So actually, Alan, who is Carl Hester's groom, flew with all the horses alongside Isabel Worth, who travelled with her horses over to Tryon. So again, we were in contact with Alan. Alan knows Rachel and I really, really well. Asked how Joey is about certain things. He's a bit nervous about getting on the crate, so sometimes he reverses backwards very quickly. But again, it's a great community. And the thing with Tryon, the thing I came away thinking was there was a, yes, we were all they were all competing against each other, but the camaraderie in the dressage, within the eventing, I'm sure even more, because it's very much more of a dangerous sport. And there's obviously 3 phases that can go peaks and troughs, peaks and troughs.
Yeah.
But the camaraderie and people talking to each other and sitting around and watching each other, and there was a lot of support from different nations, and it felt incredible to be there. And it was such an experience. And I wasn't actually, I wasn't nervous per se. By the time Caroline went in the ring, we'd done our job, we tried the best we could. I just enjoyed it, which I didn't expect. I felt physically sick probably 5 minutes before she got on, but I had a responsibility as a coach. I went to the toilet, walked off, and we have our way of doing things. Caroline has her own time, and we have a system, and it worked really, really well. And it was once in a lifetime, fantastic time. But of course, we had the threat of the hurricane and the tornadoes that were coming.
Oh my God, yes.
So there was a lot of stress, and the organisers, and because Caroline was competing as an individual, I had to go to all the meetings, the chef to keep meetings and the chef the missions meetings, which again, for me, I was like, people help me out. What Caroline Griffiths, who I know really, really well, I sat next to her with my pad and shall I write this down? Is this important? But again, everybody helped each other, and it just goes to show, even at top level, which is highly competitive, everybody's in it in the same boat, and people will have a bad day and people will have a good day. And it was so nice to be a part of the success as well, because if you invest your time in supporting other people, you can get so much out of that success, and watching them go and do that, as much as being there for people that didn't particularly have a good time. I'm very much, if I could talk to myself again at 10 years ago, I would say enjoy the process much more than striving is great, but enjoy it as it goes along, because it goes so quick. I sound really old now, don't I?
I was just going to say, back in the youth days, in your youth, was the influence of Pony Club, did that have a big impact on where you are now?
Big up Mended Farmers Pony Club.
Give them a shout out. There we go.
Very much, because it's that feeling of inclusive. I went there with my pony that, again, I was just thrilled to even get around the show jumping course. Everybody was included. There were so many things to do where you could learn new skills, watch other people. I'm so grateful to it. I've still got a friend Jono, who has now become he's a farrier now, and X amount of years on. I dread to think I'm still in contact with him. I speak to him probably every week. He's got a family now, and I went to teach his son Phoenix, who it was great. And it can set up friendships for life. It can also give you experiences. I'm also still in contact with one of the instructors, Terry, there, who she taught me at Pony Club camp, and we had a great time. We were naughty, and we all went in and had a party at each other's chalets and things like that, and shaving people's eyebrows off. They were great times. I'm sure you're not allowed to do that anymore, and I wouldn't advocate doing it. But yeah, it was great fun, and in the summer we always look forward to it. And even now, unfortunately, there's not so many riding schools around. Getting the opportunity to go out and compete and to do things with other like-minded people. I wasn't necessarily bullied at school, but it wasn't necessarily the done thing for a boy to go riding. Yeah. And I see that sometimes. Luckily we didn't have social media at the time, because social media can be as much negative as it is positive, and to see people picked on and bullied in a way, I don't like that. And to be around other boys at the time that did compete, and getting a friendship group within riding was something that gave me a masses of confidence, and not feeling like I was out in the field by myself riding around on my pony and don't talk about it, because I was passionate about it. So of course when people were teasing you, and kids do tease each other, and it wasn't anything horrendous, but it does upset you, and it does make you feel a little bit, won't talk about that. And so you just, you become a bit into yourself. So yeah, I would recommend anybody going to Pony Club. And it gave me a huge skill. I learned how to shoot. I did tetrathlon because of course I enjoyed the cross country element. And again, I was picked for the area tetrathlon team, so I had to stop running and swimming and shooting. And again, on the day of the tetrathlon, would my pony load? No, she wouldn't. You know, so I was absolutely beside myself. And again, I got given a pony to compete. You know, and it was fantastic that some other families that were there, you know, lent me a pony, and it just shows that there's so much kindness there, and to then see sort of the kindness later on at work, the World Equestrian Games. You know, obviously people aren't lending each other's horses, but to see the passion in everybody and the commitment that these people have gone through to get where they are. You know, it doesn't change no matter what level you compete at. People can be kind at every level.
On a parting note, Matt, just like a little bit of advice for you that you'd give now to young riders that are out there hoping to make it within the equestrian industry, not just dressage, but in the world of equestrian sport.
Wow, I would say be prepared to be in it for the long haul. You know, obviously seeing people like top level people compete on the telly, you could see the end product, but what actually goes into it is blood, sweat and tears, and it's not for the faint-hearted, I would say that. But then I wouldn't discourage anybody to go into it. I would say go into it with your eyes open. Again, like I've done, take opportunities that come your way, but also be able to make kind of opportunities come your way. Put yourself forward, be proactive. It's not handed to you on a plate by any means, and it will never be handed to you on a plate. And you've got to just keep going and keep working hard. And then when you feel like you haven't got any more to put in, just put in a bit more, because the reward, the life I've had, and I thank everybody that's helped me along the way. There are people out there that will help you, and there are people that will be so influential in your life if you leave yourself open to that opportunity. But yeah, it's tough. It really is. And don't be afraid of the knockbacks, because you will be knocked back and you will be challenged beyond any thought that, you know, if you think it's going to be challenging, times that by 1,000,000 and you'll nearly be close.
Well, what a perfect bit of advice there, and what a great way to conclude episode 2 of In Conversation. Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. I wish you all the best with these tough times that we're in at the moment, and hopefully I'll see you very soon.
Thanks very much for calling.
Okay.